Well, welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. This is Patrick Halstead, and I'm your presenter today. I want to thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about the end of InfoPath, and I am recording this. I know it, as mortals, it's difficult for us sometimes to consider death, and I'll talk more about what that means in a second. First of all, the agenda for today is to talk about InfoPath, the end of InfoPath, and give you an overview of just what is in store and what your options are, including the timeline. This is obviously all guesstimates from Qdabra. We don't have any official word from Microsoft, but we do have enough information, I think, to talk about it today. We're going to be doing this as the first in a 12-part series, so we figure that you're very interested in migrating or talking about the future of your forms. So we're going to be talking about it for the next 12 weeks. This presentation today is just information. I've got quite a few slides, hopefully keep you interested and engaged. We've got some pictures for you, but we're not doing any demos today. It's just a short slide walkthrough, and then I'll be here to answer your questions. So just to give us a quick recap, John Paoli, who is now the president of a standards organization dealing with XML and other technologies that Microsoft has spun off. John Paoli is the co-creator of XML, and he is one of the guys that, along with Adriana Niegi, that created InfoPath 1.0, and I was there, of course, as well. And here's a quick timeline. We started off with NetDocs in '99. NetDocs became what we call XDocs internally at Microsoft. InfoPath 2003, 2007, 2010, 2013, and what's next? Well, here's the history again. InfoPath was essentially the phoenix rising from the NetDocs ashes internally. Microsoft created this online Office technology called NetDocs, all XML based, and that technology was basically spun down at the end of 2000 because it was considered to be competitive to the current rich client back in 2000, a long time ago. This is way before Google Docs, right? Well, NetDocs InfoPath was the only thing that came out of the NetDocs ashes. And in 2003, it came on the scene as the SharePoint form technology. Really didn't find its stride until SP1, the service pack there, that came at the end of 2003. In 2007, of course, we had browser support. 2010, much better browser support. Now the ribbon is there. And 2013, not much. And 2014, today, we don't have a version 2014, but we expect that there will be an announcement today on the InfoPath team blog, basically announcing that InfoPath 2013 is the last version. So what does that mean? Well, let's review again here why InfoPath has been so adopted. InfoPath is cool for a number of reasons. Number one, it's worker-friendly. Office worker friendly. You don't have to have a developer. You can create rich forms, if then else rules, validation. You can even have XPath. This is a macro language that is standard across the internet. InfoPath is a very standards-based application, unlike other Office applications which started their lives as proprietary formats. InfoPath has always been an XML format, and what that means to you is that it bridges the gap to these web services, allows you to populate data in your forms, do validation. Also, you get good-looking forms with HTML because XML translates very well to HTML with the style sheets that InfoPath includes. You've got a rich, feature-rich form, lots of different controls. So InfoPath's great. There's nothing really out there today that competes with it in terms of this feature set, and it allows you to create very rich forms without the need to hire a developer, and it looks good. Okay, so InfoPath is on its way out, and here is my timeline. Here's what I think is going to happen. And I think that in 10 years' time, InfoPath will be gone, probably in 9 years, 9.5 years, something like that. But the reason for this is the current investment is very, very large. So we have millions of forms out there in the wild. In the U.S. alone, there's probably, I don't know, I'm guessing 20 million InfoPath form templates that are live in production. Microsoft IT themselves rely on thousands internally, and most customers are still on 2010 SharePoint, and that includes Microsoft internally. Windows XP no longer supported. Well, we just got that announcement last week. When did Windows XP come out? Microsoft Money still available for free download on their website. And you know, in 2023, SharePoint may not exist either. So let's not you know, be too frantic here. There is going to be a long timeline for this event, but there is, you know, obviously we need to plan for the future. And right now, I think that 2014 there will be some changes. And this is my guess, right? This is not, there's nothing official here from Microsoft. This is my guesstimate. But I would expect that the 365 cloud, where Microsoft is focusing a lot of its attention, will toggle InfoPath off as the default option in 2014, sometime probably in Q2, maybe Q3, maybe sooner, maybe in the next month. And then a couple years later, you won't have support in the cloud for InfoPath. Now, they still have to continue supporting their existing customers, so it's likely that the browser support will continue up until 2016, maybe 2017. But at some point, SharePoint 2016, the next version of the on-premise edition, will not support InfoPath. So they'll probably make the designer available as a download. That's my conjecture. And it might be even free. There are other people working on such a beast. We'll talk more about that in a second. But I would expect that by 2022, that's the last year of support from Microsoft. So Microsoft does support the product for 10 years after 2013. So the good news, InfoPath is here today, won't go away for a while. Microsoft may even get some pushback. You know, the format's very open. You can extract your data from your XML files, assuming that you named your data source correctly. You can create your other apps from your data, and we'll talk about several options out there today, including Formotus, ServeBus, and Qdabra. You can also migrate your investment to other technologies like Nintex, and we'll talk about those in a second too. So the bad news, well, here's Seattle today. Yes, indeed. We need an umbrella. The bad news is that there's no recommended migration path. Now, there's this thing called Forms on SharePoint lists, which you get forms today with SharePoint lists. Well, there's more support probably coming for Forms on SharePoint lists, but even so, there won't be support for things like rules, repeating data. Today with InfoPath, you can customize these SharePoint lists. If you don't have InfoPath, the lists don't support rules. They don't support repeating data. We don't support web service calls. Access Online, hey, they're making a lot of effort into Access. Microsoft is. We expect Access Online to look really good in a year or so. And we expect to be helping customers migrate solutions to Access. But there's no support for XML. There's no support for rich rules. You can write VBA code, great. There's limited support for web service calls, although we do think that Agave's web service integration will be coming soon. It's not there yet. Word Online, well, once again, you've got a wonderful, rich editing experience, but there's no default XML validation, and you can't do web service submits from your Word documents online. Same is true for Excel. So bottom line is there's really no recommended migration path for InfoPath internally in the SharePoint ecosystem today. So what makes a good eForm? Let's talk first about what do you need in your form, in your eForm solution today. You know that you have InfoPath, you've got a good-looking, rich layout. You need performant rendering, something that's not too slow. You need to have an open data format. You need to be able to repurpose the data, extract it for downstream processes, line of business applications, and you need to do all this without spending a lot of money. So low code, low developer cost, or zero developer cost ideally. You need to integrate your forms with your data, and you want to give your staff something that's a familiar interface, something that is going to be not going to freak them out, something that's easy to learn, low cost. So today's solutions out there, we've got InfoPath, the best solution today, and it will be for the next two years or so. Even though it will be eventually going away, like everything, it's still the premier form solution out there today for the reasons I mentioned earlier, and for the fact that it does address this criteria that you need in a good eForm. Adobe Lifecycle, if you're doing XML validation, web service calls, things like that, you're going to need a developer. You have to write code. It's also not free, like InfoPath is for SharePoint. Lifecycle does cost some money, Access today, great for DB admins, great for people who know Access, but most of the people who come to InfoPath, they look at Access and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to write VBA code. They don't understand what a database format should look like. Nintex Forms came on the market several years ago. They're great to integrate with Nintex. Obviously, a lot of JavaScript, and there's no migration path for InfoPath here. No direct migration path, but people will be adopting Nintex Forms. If you have Nintex in-house already, makes sense. K2 Forms, a little bit of a different format here. They've got a little better of a back-end story than Nintex does, not quite a rich UI, but once again, you're going to need a developer to build these out. There are form technologies like Wufoo on the web that create these simple surveys, relatively flat forms, not a lot of repeating data. They're improving, they're innovating, they do allow for integration with web services, some web services, not all of them, but a few specific web services you can pull into your Wufoo forms. But once again, you can't do a bunch of rich UI, rich if-then-else rules. There are, I think, changes happening with Wufoo where they are adding more and more logic, and so this is a very interesting area to look at. But right now, it's really best for simple forms. So what about migration? So you've got some options. So I'm going to talk about 4 different migration options for you, and we'll go into detail about what those mean. The first option, a status quo, which would be to maintain your file format and your data as it is today. Second option would be a hybrid approach to extract your data from your forms, build a SharePoint list solution. We'll talk about that. Third approach would be to convert to one of these proprietary solutions like Nintex or K2. And then the fourth approach would be to create a custom app. Do it yourself. Okay, so here's the 1997 BMW, still running fine today. That's the status quo. It does not get the greatest gas mileage, but it has all the features you love, right? So here's the approach for the status quo. You can download these new apps that are out there. So Formotus has this great rich client app for your mobile devices, iOS, Android, Windows coming soon. And this app can be downloaded and you can use it with your InfoPath formats. Of course, Qdabra is here to help you with your Formotus client if you need help there. Obviously, we're not the only ones. Formotus has a rich ecosystem of people that are out there helping them with their solution. ServeBus, another company, and they have a version of InfoPath Form Services. It's not InfoPath Form Services. It's their own technology. They have a service that runs on SharePoint and allows you to view and edit InfoPath forms. So it's great for that SharePoint on-premise. We're partners with ServeBus. More than happy to help you there. We're also developing an app. We actually announced this in December. We have a beta coming, I think, in March for the SharePoint conference. And this is a cloud-ready app that you can install. Of course, you can install it on your SharePoint on-premises as well. And it will read and write InfoPath forms. So it will take an InfoPath form template. It will allow you to view it, edit the form, and submit it back to SharePoint, just like you do today. And the good news about some of these apps are that they have more features than InfoPath does today. So what we've done is we've looked at the common areas where InfoPath needs to be extended, and we've extended our Forms Viewer app to include the Q rules functions that we think Microsoft should have added a few years ago. For example, passing parameters from one form to another, inserting rows in a table. We've done that in Q rules. We've done that in the Forms Viewer app. Formotus also has a bunch of mobile controls for e-signatures, getting your coordinates, your GPS coordinates, capturing a picture. So there's a lot of cool functionality in these new apps out there. And I guess that if there's a pro here for you, it's very low cost short term, and I think that longer term it's even lower cost potentially. I mean, obviously, all these apps, our app, the Qdabra app, is going to be open source and free, and the other apps are relatively well priced. There's not a huge, obviously, there's free trials available for both of them, and they're not based. It's not a server cost here for Formotus stuff. It's per user. So it's very reasonable, and if you look at the cost of deploying apps across your organization, I think that you'll see there's a huge, huge win for you if you're deploying these apps. So that the pros are low cost, new features are there, and it's low risk because you can just migrate your forms as is. Plus the data is open today, so assuming that you named your data sources correctly in your InfoPath Form Designer, you will be able to migrate to any other option, any of the 3 other options later. So there's really no risk here. The cons are that some features, digital signatures, master detail, some of the controls that some people are using in InfoPath today may not be supported. And you'll have a new dependency, right? Obviously, the SharePoint ecosystem is constantly growing, so we would expect more apps to join the fray. Okay, here's the hybrid. Now, if you've got questions, feel free to use the questions. I'm not going to look at questions until the end of the presentation in about 5 minutes, but please add your questions. I'll be doing that in order I receive them. So here's the hybrid approach. The hybrid approach is to extract the data from your XML and to create SharePoint lists or access solutions on top of it. We do have tools that allow you to extract the data from your XML. Of course, you can do it yourself. It's just XML. But if you need to map it to multiple lists or use a database in the back end with Access, we do have tools available for you. You can build a quick list UI. We're going to be actually covering this next week and the following week. We'll be showing you how to do this. You can build a list UI in SharePoint today. You can create parent-child connections with multiple lists to handle the repeating data, create a dashboard on top of that. You can add logic to these list views to replace InfoPath rules. And you can, of course, add workflows in the back end. So the pros here are that it's completely out of box, cloud parity. Don't have to worry about app dependencies. The cons, if there are cons here, is that you're going to potentially not have a smooth, performant experience. You may have to be missing some features because list forms and access forms online don't currently have all the support that InfoPath has. So there's a short-term loss of features, a bit of a clunky UI, but you can do it. And there's going to be, of course, the cost to do the conversion, to create the lists and access forms. Of course, we're here to help you with this, and we're more than happy to show you how to do this. We're going to show you how to do this next week and the following week. We have 2 parts on this. But let's mention a couple other approaches. There's the convertible, right? Yes, there's the convertible approach, which is to convert to a custom ISV application. So here you're going to take, if you already have an Intex or K2 or Adobe, it makes sense to do this. You choose a migration specialist. We can help you with these. We've done these before. We're an Intex partner. We can help you build the solutions. You would build the solutions, and these solutions would better integrate with your existing ISV solutions. It's going to be more costly to build and maintain. The data format is not as open as InfoPath. In fact, it's closed. And you've got that dependency. Okay, the final approach, right? Yes, you can do it yourself. You can get off the ground, create a custom solution. So this would be a web page, for example. You would create an ASP.NET web page or a JavaScript web page for your forms. We have tools that will help do this and streamline the creation of web pages. You would extract the data from InfoPath, put it in a database, Azure, for example, or you can put it on your own SQL web database. Build the web pages yourself, have us do it for you, hire someone else, create the dashboards on top of it, and you can integrate with other systems. Of course, you get a lot of support. You can do whatever you want here, but the problem is it's going to be very costly to build and maintain. So we have this series. This is the first part of the After InfoPath series. Here are the upcoming webinars. We have 2 talking about extracting the data, that hybrid approach. Next week and the following week, we're going to be showing you how to take the data and move it to SharePoint lists. We're going to talk about how to extract the data, do parent-child lists, do dashboards on top of them. We'll talk about the workarounds for the issues that come up. And then in February 20th, we'll show you how to create a custom web page for InfoPath Forms. We will have a webinar showing you how to build a mobile solution using Formotus. And then we'll show you how to do it with ServeBus as a browser-based solution. We have an Access Online solution we'll be showing you in March after the SharePoint conference. Then we'll show you how to do an Intex form. Then we'll have a webinar on K2 forms. And then we'll have one for Adobe Lifecycle. And finally, we'll have one for Wufoo before we show you our open source solution in April. Now, our open source solution, there is a video out there today on our Forms Quote. This is a new site to address your concerns with InfoPath. In fact, if we switch to this site, let me just quickly show you. We've created this site for you, and this is essentially will become a community site. Let's see if I can get there. So this is the site that we've created to address the issues with InfoPath. And the first thing we have on the site is we have a tool, a scanner app that you can download to actually you can send us an email and we'll send you a trial, a beta version of this. But we have a tool that allows you to scan your current SharePoint site to see where your InfoPath forms are. We talk about extending your current investment to take your data out of InfoPath, and you can basically use a web service. So the first thing that will probably get removed from InfoPath will be the support for the sandbox. I would expect a couple years from now that will be removed. That's along with the browser support. So you will need to extend your forms if you continue using them to use some kind of a web service to get that functionality. We have that today. We also have options for maintaining your current investment using our Forms Your app, and we can show you how to migrate your data to Access to a list-based solution or Adobe. So once again, that's formsquo.com. We would love to have you come here and engage us. We will be updating the site in a month or so with new videos and new content. This is our team site. Like I said, all the stuff we're doing is going to be open source and free. We're not going to charge you for any of this stuff. So one more thing to note here, and that is, before I answer questions, is this site I was just on, the team blog. So I would expect today that this site will be updated with an announcement from Microsoft basically mentioning that there will be no future versions of InfoPath. So check back on this site later today and you may see an update. So with that, I would like to switch over to questions and answers, and want to once again thank you for joining me today. We've had a very large turnout. We will be placing this video online. And first off, we've got a question on, let's see here, from Greg. How about migrating to Salesforce? That's a great idea. Obviously, with Salesforce, you've got a company backing Salesforce, but you do have an app framework there. I think that would be one of the solutions to look at. Because your InfoPath data is open, you could essentially migrate it to a Salesforce app. And that's a very interesting idea. Thank you, Greg, for that idea. Andy has a question. With the other tools, do you see support for custom code for C#, VB, and JScript? Yeah, of course, the other solutions today, Access, Nintex, K2, they all have support for custom code. It depends on the app or the solution in terms of what code they offer. For example, Access, VBA, .NET, you've got both. Now, online access, I believe you don't have that yet, but we would expect a program story, a programmable, what do you call it? We would expect a extensibility story to appear with Access Online and Word Online in the near future. So thanks, Andy, for that question. So we've got another comment here from King. Thank you, King. Very thoughtful approach to offer free tools and a new site to get people looking for your solutions. You like the automotive photos? Okay, great. And okay, thank you for the comment there. I thought you were going to ask a question. Sorry about that. What led to this decision? Another question from Greg. That's a great question. I think that, first of all, you have to keep in mind that there's a lot of work that Microsoft has to do to adapt everything to the cloud. And InfoPath is pretty much, in some ways, done today. I mean, there are features that we wish they would add, but it's a relatively mature product, whereas Access Online, Word Online, Excel Online are not. You may think that Access, Word, and Excel are mature products. Well, they are in the rich client, but they aren't in the web. And I think that Microsoft has just focused resources on where they need to. And that is on these apps that will be enabling the 365 ecosystem. There's a lot of functionality that we need Microsoft to add to these apps. So it's great that they're doing this, and I think that they're just making a decision about where to invest resources. Knowing that InfoPath is relatively complete today, they're continuing support for 9 years. 10 years ago we didn't have SharePoint, right? We just had the first version of SharePoint. Everything changes. I do think there's some political, life cycle-like reasons behind this too. I think the people that were driving InfoPath, people like me at Microsoft, we left Microsoft and we started these startups, these small businesses. And, without a steward at Microsoft, it's kind of hard to push a vision forward. Certainly, this vision of open XML forms is still alive and well. You look at the site that John Paoli is driving an organization today around this. So this XML forms technology is not going away. And the fact that InfoPath uses XML, keep in mind, means that your data can be extracted and reused. And you've got time. You've got time to plan your future. You don't need to worry so much today about what you're doing. I think that you need to start coming up with a plan over the next year, and then in 2015, 2016, you need to start executing on the plan. But I think that XML forms are not going away. Business processes today on the web use web services. Web services are XML, whether you're using JSON or SOAP or REST. They're all XML based, and you need XML data. So you're going to need an XML form-based technology. And I don't think that that's going away. I think that we're basically just saying that the InfoPath client itself has reached a point where it's probably in 9 years or so it will not be supported, but it will still be probably around, just like Microsoft Money is. So great, Greg. Thanks for that comment. And then King has a couple more thanks and questions. Thank you, King. Let's see, Justin, is there any thoughts on how long Qdabra will continue to support Q rules and DBXL? That's a great question. We'll support it as long as we have people that are using it. So I would expect at least 10 more years. We've got a lot of people using Q rules and DBXL. And DBXL, of course, is not just an InfoPath web service. It's an XML-based web service. And that means that you can take any of these custom applications and use the web service DBXL to map the data to your database in a data-driven way, a loosely coupled system, so you don't have separate web services for every single schema. You can have one generic one, and that's what DBXL is today. It just so happens that InfoPath is the best client for XML. But yeah, those two tools that we provide, we'll be supporting those as long as we have customers, and we expect at least 10 years for those. Susie's got a great question. Well, actually, Susie's got a question. What is the URL for the website? Yes. So there's a couple of websites here. First one is the InfoPath team blog, which has not been updated in about 3 years. I would expect an update today. The other one is formsquo.com. It's just like status quo, but it's formsquo.com, and we've got some information here. This site will be updating it for the SharePoint conference. We'll be at the SharePoint conference with Formodas talking about this stuff, and Microsoft. Microsoft will have a special session talking about this at the conference. We'll be there to wave at you and talk about these options. Let's see, Andy, created scripts for buttons, one click. I'm just not quite sure. Okay, so that's just a comment. Michael, you've got a question, what to do if we are not ready to comfortable with our data in the cloud. Yeah, like I said, you can continue using your current solution. I mean, Microsoft's on 2010 SharePoint. They're not moving until next year. No solution today is immortal. We're all going to be changing our solutions at some point. So I think that you could stick with what you've currently got. And like I said, the data is open. So you've got SQL database. You've got some options for migrating to InfoPath in 2 or 3 years or 3 or 4 years when you need to. Of course, you don't need to do it in 3 or 4 years either. If you've got InfoPath and SharePoint and you've bought those licenses, you can stick with it for a long time. We know people that are still using Windows XP. Yeah, so I would just not worry too much. Where's the download for Forms Quote? So Stacy, we do have a beta program right now, so we got a limited, we got about 20 slots left for our beta program. We're going to be putting, we basically have you sign up, so you go to the Forms Quote site, you go to Contact Us, and you send us an email, and then we'll get in touch with you and we'll give you the tools and we'll get you upgraded. We've done a bunch of upgrades and installs already of these technologies, so we're very happy to engage you. We do have a few spots left, so run quickly to the site and contact us so we can put you in that beta program. In March, April timeframe, we'll be opening it up to a much broader list of people. And like I said, we'll be updating the site in about a month with more information. Question from Jesse. What leads you to believe the announcement will occur today? Well, gee, I wonder. I've had this little bird chirping at me for a long time now. Yeah, no, I think that the word needs to get out, and I think that there will be an announcement today. And yeah, right. I probably shouldn't say that, but let's talk about this. Let's not worry about it. It is going to be a process happening over many years, and I think people need to start talking about it. And I think that you'll see something today, but I could be wrong. And then Susie, let's see, what solutions support offline forms? Right. So Formotus does today, and Formotus is a great solution for that. Also, you can look at Adobe, of course, but I think that for offline solutions, I would stick with InfoPath for a while and then move to technology like Formotus if you've got mobile devices. Everyone's going mobile anyway, so I think that's a great solution to move to. And you can start looking at that today. You don't need to move immediately, but we can help you with that. Ken, you got a question? Do you see a new product from Microsoft? Well, sure, you never know. I mean, they've got a couple things out there they've been talking about, but none of them have the feature set. We're hopeful that Access will provide a nice migration strategy, in the short term, but it's still going to be Access, right? And I think they have a lot of work to do on the web, and I think that it's going to be challenging to get all the functionality. So there will be, I think there's lots of options. I think that you could take your data out of InfoPath today, you can move it to SQL Azure using our tools, and you can put an access form on top of that. What we're going to show next week and the following week, I think, is a slightly better solution, which is to move to list forms. But like I said, the best solution right now may be to stick with InfoPath for another year or two, and just see how things develop. Who knows? Maybe there will be a change on the front. But it gives you time to plan a future and look at the pros and cons of all these different approaches. So I think that a measured approach is what I would take. There are a lot of options. The good news is, once again, the InfoPath data that you have is open. You don't have to worry about a proprietary format. It's just XML. And there are lots and lots of things that handle XML out there today. And I'd kind of like to end on that note. Nothing ever is as bad as it seems, right? And so I think that we're here to help you. We're going to be completely transparent in this. And if you've got any questions whatsoever, we're here to help. And thank you very much for joining me today. We will be, like I said, presenting more webinars on this topic. Starting next week, we'll be showing you how to move your InfoPath forms to a list form, and we'll be showing you a complex example. So we look forward to having you here.